So Josh, this is a mix. Originally, it was a certificate program with a number of students, but we've decided to open it up now with COVID and have other people come in. Um, you saw did you see the certificate program as such I sent you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically we're just trying to get people to understand complexity and that we need to bring in all these different dimensions into our daily life process to be able to achieve the change we want in regeneration. So we're now in the landscape, agriculture, natural resources process, and then we go into the social one, and then into the economics one, culture, politics, and spirituality at the end. And we've come in from the basics, planetary boundaries and planetary changes, and then the philosophical things with Alan Savory and holistic management. So it's basically, I think what you're doing is one of the best examples of regeneration I know, from the whole value chain, going from the soil all the way to the final consumers.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we didn't start knowing where we wanted to be. I really knew what I didn't want to do. And as a small business, as an entrepreneur, I guess, I was always looking for the opportunities and what other people kind of looked at as garbage. I came up in the recycling field. I came up in the auto recycling field. My family owned an auto salvage yard. And, that wasn't a way to get rich, especially if you were just like a mechanic trying to fix some cars. But I started really paying attention to the fact that most people thought of perfectly good things as garbage. And as I grew and as I became more of an activist, that really started to both upset me, but then get me excited too about this opportunity that exists and what other people don't see as valuable. And if you're willing to do some work and put in some elbow grease, you might get something nice out of that. So I really came to agroforestry or agriculture because I was working on the energy sector in Oregon. I was recycling used vegetable oil from restaurants, and like 60,000 liters a month, converting it into fuel to run vehicles, to run a garbage truck fleet that was collecting the oil, and we were making fuel for their fleet. And I felt good about that, but as I realized the limitations of that, how few gallons there were, liters in the system, but how much we needed to burn each day. In the world, we use 90 million barrels of oil a day. 90 million barrels, it's a lot. 42 gallons each. So each barrel of oil, too, as you get into farming and understanding energy, is about 11 years of muscle work. So a barrel of oil is a lot of energy, right? And as I got into trying to create energy from agriculture or create energy from the waste stream, I really started to feel the gravity of the challenge. And so that led me into agriculture. It led me into trying to see how we could actually create this stuff in a way that actually that worked. You said it a second ago. We don't need bullshit right now. We don't need nonsense. We don't need more subsidy to make things appear to work. So I really wanted to get out and see what I could do to grow and produce real energy for society, for my people, my family, my community, my country, my hemisphere, and such as it grows out. And it led us to our little farm in Putiscal. And in Putiscal, many of you have been there, it is deforested. It was one of the worst examples of forestry in the world, according to National Geographic about 20 years ago. Outside of like Haiti, which had no government. We had a government in Costa Rica, and we still ripped and tore the forest to pieces. And I think about 90% of Costa Rica, at least, was deforested over the last 200 years. Yeah, and Putiscal is really, really bare because of it. And we ended up becoming just a cattle area because the soil had all rained away. Now, as my mind was turning on these things, and as I was listening to my community in Putiscal, because I showed up there to try something new, but I didn't know what to do, I really listened and I watched the rain fall. And I watched the rain, you guys all know the rivers, what they look like there, right? I watched the farms washing away. My business mind started turning around on this and what could happen and what was possible. And we started experimenting with forests, building forests. And I came to this really just planting a lot of trees and then seeing what would happen. And what we learned, the lessons learned there are, I think, what you said a minute ago, like the regenerative economy is ready to explode. In places like Puriscal, it's the only thing to do. We're in dire straits, and we're losing all of our young people. We're losing our social networks because they're all moving to the city to work at Intel. And this is something you all know. I don't need to lecture anybody in this room on this probably, but it's really personal for me, being from the countryside as a child in Oregon and moving to the countryside in Costa Rica and feeling what it means to have brain drain, to have youth drain away, and to have your soil fall away with every rainstorm. So we really enacted very simple solutions to start preserving soil, and from there it grew into preserving community. And it came from both ends. It took community to start this, right, to kickstart it. But what we've designed now are pretty simple, small business, collaborative and cooperative solutions to how you fund, finance, how you get market access, how you value add as a small co-op, with good access to markets and investors around the world. So we've pieced this together out of Puriscal, but in a way that has a global touch and has the global touch that really makes a local difference. And on the other direction, local experiences that have a global touch and expansion too. So, you know, what we've learned there is valuable, and I really love to answer any questions. Amanda, the most powerful part of what I did out there, or what happened, was having an open space to collaborate. And we had about 4,000 people come from all over the world on the first 10 years to learn, to plant trees together, to listen to teachers, to show up and teach. And we forged a team. And that includes Edward. It includes the people that I've expanded out and met in Costa Rica. We forged a big team that's ready to tackle a lot of these problems. And not from a abstract way in raising donations and hoping we can throw donations at a black hole of negativity, but how we actually create self-feedback loops that we mimic those feedback loops that we've learned in nature. We mimic those in our economics. And we've really done that. We've tried to internalize the externalities, quote unquote, the negative things. We've added that to our ledger. So soil regeneration, you can really see in a few years how you get to put in less and less and get more and more. And these things are really important. This isn't just a hippie game anymore. The hippies are ahead of us on this. They knew this was important. But it takes business people now. It takes lawyers. It takes government officials. But at the end of the day, it takes, I believe, and I hope entrepreneurs show up and do this themselves. Because if we wait for governments, people like me that have a smile on their face right now because there's still a few scarlet macaws, in another 30 years, I'm going to be so angry when there's no more whales that when we do have political control, we're going to be like a dictatorship for the nature, and then it's not going to be fun. So I want to proactively fix things so we don't need dictatorships to come and protect the last 3% of nature. And we're going to do that, I think, with business. And I'm not naive about that. Business has been used in a lot of ways. It can be a tool for good, evil, malevolence, whatever. But we use it, and we use the math in these systems to be just and fair to the people involved. And that means all the way down to paying a farmer 5 or 6 times more for the product than the world market because we're involved in the value adding chain through vertical integration. We take, for example, we grow turmeric, our neighbors grow turmeric. If you sold that in the world market, you might get 10 cents a kilo, where when we sell it internally and help make things like tinctures and essential oils for the US market as a vertically integrated body, we can pay $1.70, $1.75 instead of 10 cents a kilo. So it really shifts and flips the script. There's a lot of money in food. There's a lot of money in wellness. There's a lot of money in forestry, and it all goes to like 10 families. It goes to the Waltons, it goes to the Warehousers. We are here to integrate forestry all the way with food, all the way to the consumer, whether that's a guitar you want to play with regenerative wood, or a piece of turmeric that helps you take less ibuprofen. That I think our farming models have to include the same kind of polyculture in the way that we grow things, so we can subsidize our own needs. I have trees that subsidize my turmeric cost, and I have turmeric that I feed that subsidize my trees' nutrients needs. So these things are not abstract for me. They're not abstract for our project. We're really just learning how to quantify it all and figure out how to get enough money to pay enough lawyers to help us make this make sense to hedge funds and to those types of people. And they're coming on board rather quickly. especially through COVID. There's a lot of awakening. There's also a lot of retraction, right? But what we've seen is a lot of people who've done very well for themselves end up going on a trip and meeting you, Edward, or maybe they go a little further into the jungle and they end up taking ayahuasca with someone, and now they're changing the way they think about the forest. So what I've tried to do, and what we've really done on a small scale, is prove that if you can get people to a place like Costa Rica and they can fall in love with the jungle, not just the beach and going and getting a tan, but if they can fall in love with a farmer, if they can fall in love with the river, they'll invest in it later to save it. And I don't mean they'll donate for it. They will invest in it. We've proven that. Hundreds of people have invested in this with us. And we are at the precipice now of having hundreds more. And I'm in this talk with you right now, and I'm here to share, because we're here to share and collaborate on that. I do not hold any of this close to my chest. This is all to make sure that the regeneration works. There's no such thing as competition in forestry right now. We need to all do this, and we'll figure out what to do when we compete later. Let's compete on forestry. Let's see who does better. So I ramble a lot, but that's in a nutshell why and what we do.
Josh, maybe you can tell us a bit how you got started. I mean, you got into this barren land, growing there, the most eroded part of the country because it was colonized early, and it went through the different things, the yearly crops, then it went through coffee, and when coffee didn't grow anymore, then they went through cattle, and that was basically the dead end.
Yeah. Well, now it's time to go to palm, but that won't work.
And so how do you actually start something like this? And then when did you decide to engage your neighbors so you have actually a bigger amount of product, which then you can start, and how you're through Black Sheep and everything, you're trying to get to these new markets and opening the markets. I think that story as an entrepreneur is exactly one of the things we're trying to really wake up in this group.
Well, we bought this, you said it right about Putiscal. It was a progression of disasters. It was like a giveaway at first. They told locals from the city they could have land if they would go out there and make it useful. And so it was clear cut in the 50s probably. Or it began to be clear cut, but not even for lumber. It was just taken so they could put in rice and beans and stuff. Well, in that progression, I came along there when it was just cattle grass as far as you could see. And not even a lot of agriculture outside of that, right? There wasn't a lot of food production out there. It's really a food desert with a few cows walking around. So right away, day one, it was about the neighbors, because I showed up with a little bit of money. Me and about 10 people put together enough to buy our farm and enough to invest in it for like 2 years. We brought $100,000 down to Putiscal to invest in this farm. And most of that went to my neighbors to help me learn what to do there and how to work and what was needed. And to be honest, it was almost all local action that did it to me. It was MAG, it was Cope Putiscal, it was INA, it was the national parks.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think there's ever a time when it was like somehow like one day it's like not the neighbors, and then the next day all of a sudden there's community involvement. It's like you sink or swim, and your neighbors are either involved and like co-creating with you and interacting with you, and vice versa, or you're isolated and you don't succeed.
Yeah.
There's no room for like that kind of isolation and this like otherness idea.
Especially when you're moving to Central America as a gringo. I take that responsibility seriously. I'm not trying to throw a bunch of white guilt around here, but I study history, and I feel the weight of my privilege. And I was born poor white trash in Southern Oregon, but I still have that privilege. And this is a great time to reflect on that these last weeks and talk about these issues. But I moved to Central America as a big white guy, and I didn't know Spanish. I moved to Putiscal with a book in my hand. So showing up there and listening to Ministry of Agriculture as good as I could, one word at a time. And a few very precious neighbors in Putiscal that did know English that took me in. So we went to all the Cope Putiscal meetings, all of the National Park and ISE meetings. We went to the Zona Corredor Vigilágico de los Pasalapas meetings, and we did what was asked of us. I didn't really know what to do. I did what they asked. And what I found is most of my neighbors, they go to the meetings, but they actually don't follow through. So we followed through on all of these asks from Ministry of Agriculture, and they kept showing up, and they kept helping us, and they kept giving us things because they know that we'll do a true organic experiment that they can pay attention to. So for Ministry of Agriculture in Puriscal, I probably planted 50 different things they asked us to, and watched it and monitored it, and they measured them and come out and check the soil. And so it really came from that. I didn't show up with my business. I showed up with a big open heart to do something that was necessary. So that's our story. Now, the part that we've brought to the table lately is that access to markets and access to reaching out to the neighbors and bringing not only the good work of forestry and stuff, but how it produces. Because at first my neighbors thought we were kind of crazy for wanting to grow turmeric. For them, it's a weed. For them, it's in every, it just doesn't cost anything because it's everywhere. It grows so easy. But we had companies come to our farm over the years to spend time, and they wanted turmeric in volume from a regenerative forestry farm. They wanted that. And we responded to the market's needs. We didn't just show up with a superfood and say, this is what we think people should eat. It was asked of us. And, as a small farmer, just because you can grow something doesn't mean you can get it to market and sell it, especially in a foreign country. Or a certain amount will go to Costa Rica, but only a certain amount. The rest needs to go somewhere that demands it. So we started figuring out on the same ethical level of why I showed up there, to be a good person and to do good for the planet. I didn't just want to ship turmeric around the world. That's Costa Rica's water. I don't want to send our water somewhere. So we got into the science of it in collaboration with Ciprona and UCR, and with CIPA Labs, and they helped develop concentrated products from this so that we could have the logistics part and the value-adding part of our business be in line with our ethics and do our best to Costa Rican soil, not just end up like the pineapple companies or the banana companies, but how do you leave an imprint that's good or positive, regenerative? So in doing this design with all of those government agencies and quasi-government agencies, we answered the call less than we came with the idea. And then we've been bringing experts in, and we try to get the money to pay experts to do their jobs. And that's a hard thing as a small farmer. That's why we created Black Sheep. Black Sheep is like an umbrella and circle around the small farms that can help with the knowledge, help with the experts when we needed, help with the investment when needed. We take risks that a small farmer, I never want a small farmer to take. I never want my neighbor, Carlos Mora, to go into debt for some piece of equipment and lose his land. I would quit. I would sue my own company. So, I would protest it. So we are not going to repeat those neo-colonial habits of the past. So to keep small farmers out of debt completely and in equity with the value-adding chain is the real goal. And that's why Black Sheep exists. We can take more risk. We take money from like accredited investors now. They can afford to lose if we lose. As we grew the first farms, it was always very middle-class and lower middle-class people doing this together. As we've done this bigger umbrella project and taken more risk, we've been happy to move that into an SEC Reg D filing. So we take only accredited investors. And that's a missing piece for most small farmers. So I would hope that more entities like us or co-ops could come in and fill those needs, but also maintaining not just like a co-op, a real equity in the value chain. And that's where our farms succeed. They wouldn't succeed just selling their good product on the world market. They're only going to really make it because this other piece, the middlemen, so to speak, is their company too. So it's a circular ownership model so that they get to be just as much a gain from the value adding as the middlemen, so to speak. And there's a lot of details I'll send you guys. We have a 45-page business plan that distills this, and you're welcome to go through it. I have a very thorough, like 100-page investment portfolio thing that's really detailed on how the ownership model works and how we take investors. You're welcome to cut and paste and take that for your own projects. I'll walk you through it. Our accountant will walk you through it. And that I've been open sourcing all of that. So just like the farming techniques, we're not doing this to be some kind of IP. We're doing this to open up that IP and make it real to others. So we're investing hundreds of thousands in legal and lawyers that I don't want any of you to spend ever again.
We're doing a lot of work that we don't want anyone else to have to figure out by themselves. Like we're
open source it, and transparency is the game. And as the technologies catch up, as the blockchain thing gets better, more refined, and regulations are in place, we're really setting up our company in a way that plugs in really easily into those transparent and open source technologies so that we can hopefully in the near future not have this just be a game for the wealthy to invest in, but to distribute ownership even further. In our little valley, there were about 5 or 6 families that owned 4 or 5 farms. And then there was one family that owned most of it from Putiscal for cattle. And I'm not tooting our horn, but now like hundreds of people, whether they be Ticos or gringos or Canadians or people from South Africa, we now own little bits of all this title with our neighbors. And we're really driven to distribute ownership of land back to people. And Costa Rica has a huge problem with concentrated ownership. That's no different in the States.
Well, and especially,
just we're all in debt for what we own.
Especially concentrated ownership, specifically to foreigners.
Yeah,
that's been a really interesting like line to toe as people that are not from Costa Rica. That's the thing that we have to be really conscious of, is the history of colonization and how our interactions with Costa Rica are kind of, we want to set ourselves apart from that and be responsible on that level.
And hold ourselves accountable, like creating systems that hold us accountable. We're a team of people. We're building this as a team, so we have to be willing to, it's not just one person doing this or one idea. And when you do co-op things, you're listening differently. It's a different way of running a business. It's not top down.
And like integrating, like for a corporation like Black Sheep, some level of hierarchy is necessary in order to move things along.
Sure.
So we've really it's been a real learning process and lots of mistakes and lessons learned in how to move from a more like a community style of governance where everyone has the same level of vote, and integrate that into a more traditional corporate style where some people are in charge of more because they own more, but then everyone is still respected and everyone's voice is still heard. That level of hierarchy and integrating those things has been a learning process.
Well, and we really like to reward competency. So competency creates hierarchies, and that's okay. And we come from like this initial farm in Putiscal, Verdenergia, where like 60 people own it together, and we were trying radical decision-making processes. We were trying radical, like really like sitting down and really trying to be, what's the word, like,
anarchist?
No, not, I mean, trying to really respect adults and let them make decisions. And that works most of the time. And then sometimes you're like, man, you're not the pro at this, and let's trust the pro over here. So it's been a good balance of learning how to act more like a corporation and reward hierarchy or reward competency. Sorry.
How was it change? I mean, from the barren land, when did you start seeing actual regeneration start? And what does a farm look like today for somebody from outside to imagine it without seeing a picture? How would you describe it?
People who come to visit 1 year will come back the next year and be completely amazed, because the tropics, like it grows so quickly. Each rainy season we see like feet of growth versus inches. So it really changes really quickly. And I know you're really fond of saying this, but it's like the jungle really wants to grow, and the second that you leave it alone, it takes off. So it's most of the work is about figuring how to not destroy the jungle and still move the process along, versus like figuring out like, okay, how do we get the forest to do its job? Like,
well, Monteverde did some tests years ago where they had like reforested huge swaths of land, and then next to it they just left it alone. Yeah. And the parts where they left it alone have more biodiversity 40 years later. Yeah. So you need an edge. You needed to start somewhere. So we bought near Parque Carrara, National Park Carrara, and in between that and Parque Cangreja. And I did that consciously so that we could kind of pull from that biodiversity. If I was just in the middle of a desert, it would have been a lot different. But we had just a few birds going by, and they did most of the work. Like Amanda said, once you stop poisoning the soil or the weeds, the bugs start to thrive, the birds return. So we've done a progression of like casting everything from like walking around and shoving Madera Negro whips all over in the grounds and letting that come back. Within about a year, when you do it the way that our planner, Stephen Gannister, does it on site, and you are all welcome to go visit Stephen and talk about the details of this. You'll see it because he does bananas and he integrates in a lot of the local, what we call weeds, but like flowers. He integrates those. Those grow very quickly. And when you do that right, he'll have a tree in the middle of this getting fed by all that energy. And within a year, you have, you'll have grass tree, grass bushes, grass bush again. And then the next year, you chop that grass back, enough shade comes in. But after about 3 years, it starts to feel like a little orchard forest. And after about 5 years, it looks like most people think it's a jungle, but it's small. And we've been there, since 2006. And the spots that are just wild that we just fenced off and didn't return to, or we put a few pioneer species that would bring in birds and then left it alone. That's something we do. We'll go put nut trees that'll attract the birds, and then they do a lot of work. But in 10, 12, 13 years later, it's a beautiful forest. And it gave me a type of hope that's kind of dangerous with an attitude like me, which is I know it works. I have seen nature work. And now it's producing a whole bunch underneath this canopy that we've helped design. In the spots where there's some flat areas where I'm not going to hurt it by digging, we'll get 40, 50 pounds of turmeric per square meter out from the soils under these trees. So we're now producing in the hedgerows in between. We're producing in the walkways, heavy production. And I'll send you guys some video and pictures of some freshly recaptured cattle land that we went out and just did in 1 year, kind of accelerated with a piece of machinery, which is something I did in the first 10 years. I wouldn't use anything with gasoline, so I did a lot of digging. But now we're using this one machine that Ina gave us. And it's helping us rip up old grass. But we're trying some new models there to accelerate it so we can get into production quicker for small farmers that really can't wait 3 to 5 years for production. And that's an important step with what Black Sheep is, and it's not just naivete. Our neighbors need not just to think about transitioning, but they need investment to get over that hump in that transition. So instead of going and buying a farm from our neighbor, normally in Putiscal, there'll be a grandfather that died and gave it to their 10 kids. And their 10 kids are starting to die now, and they've got like 27 grandchildren that all own this farm together. And only 1 or 2 of people in the family ever stayed in the campo and still lives there. So we're helping buy out the family members that never want to come back, and investing that money, investing along with that in helping the local farmer, ourselves included, get over the hump into organic certified production. And we just became organic certified in all our farms this year for the first time, because we're finally producing for market. Initially, we were just soil builders. I didn't care to be certified for that. But now that the soil's there, it's kind of, frankly, it's obnoxious, the level of production that comes out of a healthy agroforestry system. Now, on the ground, cool details, you should all go to the farm, but we've done things like build tilapia ponds and integrate them with curvas de nivel, with bioswales. And so like 1 whole acre or 2 acres of field below an area that may look difficult to work because it's kind of mountainous. To me now, I see that mountain as a free gravity system that I get to use to move fish poo down the hill without putting in inputs. I'd like you all to understand this. No farming techniques, none of them out there right now, get more calories back than you put in. We're putting in like 10 calories to get 1. At best case scenario, sometimes it's 100 to 1, depending on the food. And when you digest that, like that we put 1 in to get 10 out, or 10 in to get 1 out, you do that for much longer. And where are we? We're in a desert. We're in a desert. And if humans are good at anything, historically, it's building deserts wherever we learn agriculture. So we didn't stop the desert building, maybe fix it or whatever. But what we did analyze was the one system that seemed to be a positive feedback, which was Peruvian in the hills. They did in the Andes, right? They did these beautiful terrace systems with ponds that function. And the fish and the birds live and function there, and they deposit their manure right on site, and then it drains into the soil around it. So we've mimicked those systems, which are actually kind of mimicking a functioning tropical forest in a way, the way the roots work and the way trees set themselves up on those steep hills. So yeah, our farming techniques are really biomimicry at its finest, I think. And I tried to stay low tech. I tried to be duplicatable, replicatable. We could have done this with some real money in the beginning and really accelerated, maybe. But if we had to do that, could Carlos do it next door? And the answer is no. And if we can't do something that can be replicated by people in the developing world or on the front line in the campo, it won't be done, right? Or we'll just be showing up and throwing money from abstractions to abstractions like carbon, which, to my neighbor Carlos doesn't mean a damn thing and shouldn't, because he's still in debt to or still doesn't own anything. And you know what I'm saying? Like he's got other things in front of him, bigger priorities than carbon. So when we show up with our great ideas from the north, I want to make sure that they're hitting on all cylinders. And as we are now a great carbon sink, that is a byproduct of really good local work. Nature needs to become a byproduct, and there's another type of byproduct, the BUY products, the stuff you can sell that vertically integrates and polycultures into farming. I found the biggest challenge in all of this is getting the accountants and bankers to understand polycultures. They look at an acre and think of an acre. I look at an acre and I see a cubic acre. I see 100 feet up with the tree that's growing there that I'm going to make into a piano one day. And I see the vanilla vines going up that and going to the next tree as another staged production. So three-dimensional space is something that we're trying to get people to understand, and topsoil as a serious investment of real estate. We're really trying to relay that topsoil is the real estate of the future, not just condos. And so quantifying topsoil and its value, you are seeing it in the conventional farming world, how much they have to input every day, or how much rains away because they don't have erosion control. Even on flat fields, they lose an unbelievable amount of weight every time it rains. It would sicken you. If you haven't read David Montgomery's work called Dirt, you should. So, you know, I take that very seriously. It takes up to 1,000 years to get an inch of topsoil in nature. So we've accelerated that by hundreds of years, or, you know, a whole millennia, by paying attention to how to accelerate it, and on the simplest level, how to coexist with bacteria and fungi and all these things instead of killing them with the things we need.
Well, realizing that we need them. We can't replace them. They are us, and we can't succeed without them. So employing them and giving them a nudge.
Yeah. The bacteria, as we kill it in the soil, so we kill it in our stomachs and our bodies, and we become more and more vulnerable to superbugs. The same thing in the soil we're experiencing. So this is a study for us on how to be better people and what to do how to expect the right thing from this planet if we want it to last. And not to be too esoteric or too hippie about it, but like trees can do this. Trees can do most of the work, which means birds can do most of the work. So I became a bird watcher. I'm a guy that's pretty fast. But when I'm in Costa Rica, I stare at birds because I appreciate what they've done for us and what they're going to do for us when we help them. So,
well, speaking of animality, it really calls into question, like you said, this is like us trying to be better people. This is like on a very existential level, like what kind of animal do we want to be? Mm-hmm. We're one of the few animals that can actually recognize our reflections in a mirror. We get to choose our own destinies. We get to reflect on our lives and our choices. And we get to decide at every moment what kind of animal are human beings.
Yeah. And that plays out directly into farming and how we treat the world. And we are seeing now, after 10 years of being nice to nature, it is being nice to us, like really productive. And anybody welcome to come out and study the soils, welcome to come out and study the water and see the difference. And you don't have to back up and take studies from my land 10 years ago. You step over 100 meters to the right where they're still doing the exact same thing that they were doing on my land. And you can see the difference in the creeks. You can see the difference in what kind of animal we want to be. I like that. Sorry, I saw your note. So yeah, by the way, I'm really trying to get used to this Zoom thing. I like talking to people and connecting with their eyes. But I'm really grateful that we all took the time to talk about this. And I would love for you to read our business plans and our pro formas and stuff so you can see the minutia of this, because it is 7 different companies tied together in vertical integration. There's a lot of details.
Yeah.
But it's complex, not complicated. There's a big difference. An airplane is complex mechanically, but not complicated to fly, right? Hopefully. So we've built a network that other people have done. It's nothing revolutionary. But maybe the few parts where it's been tweaked is justice has been added in the vertical integration, and consideration of other humans and other species. Yeah. And consideration of something as weird as the future. Like, my plans include forestry, which is a 5,000-year plan. You know, like I'm at 43 already. I'm not going to see most of the fruits of what I do. And I'm quite amazed when a lot of like 80-year-olds near me start reforesting, because they really love the future. It's something they won't see. So I'm feeling very connected to the future through food production. and responsible for the future through food production. Because our forests, when you go and step in our creeks where we've reforested, Edward, we go up there and put your foot in the river that comes down 7 kilometers from the in the Rio Lanes, comes 7 kilometers from the head, and on the other side of that mountain, the Rio Tulin comes 7 kilometers, same spring, but they come 2 directions. 10 or 15 degrees warmer the one is on the right, where it comes down in deforested land, which makes the ocean warmer, which feeds the algae and all these stuff, and bacteria growth that we don't need. So how much forests 500 miles or 1,000 miles inland matter to ocean health, which matters to people on the other end of this planet? Those things aren't too big for us to think about as business people.
Before I open it up to questions and discussion, what you've told us is that basically a lot of the results of implementation of what we've been talking along the program. We've talked about biomimicry. We've talked about many of the system thinking, the whole thing. But you have also gone a step further, which is actually getting to the market and closing the chain. A lot of people talk, we need to add value to the chains, and we need to get the intermediate big corporations out so that the farmers can get a just price. You mentioned that. You mentioned also that people came to buy turmeric or ask you for turmeric. But how is the process actually? Not everybody has the ability to open up these special markets.
That's
so
right.
A little bit about that, and then I'll just open it up to discussion.
Well, that's where Black Sheep has taken them time and effort and money to invest in things like a processing facility. Now we're investing in that near Coyol this year, so we can process about 8 million pounds of inputs. Our farms are only going to put out about 500,000 pounds. So we overscaled that so that we could help dozens of farms of our scale. That's a real need, and that's not just abstraction. You need $1 million to buy equipment and engineers and permits and all that stuff. So that's one of those choke points or funnel points that needs investment. So we spend money on that, and that may include all the way down to a farmer needing a machine that can wash something on site or peel it or something. So that is where we have to show up as people that can get funds and invest it in those choke points. Then also, we're in the US now developing a brand. We have a brand called Rewild Organics, which is all about sourcing from the farms and networks that are doing regenerative. So we're building a regenerative brand that can take this, and the regenerative brands are growing. We're getting asked to do things like private label for people like Trader Joe's to make a private label Sachi-Ichi supplement. Well, that'll come from hundreds of farms down there through the investment in the equipment and through the investment we're already making in the markets. Now, co-ops, much like us, can do that. But we're doing that for our projects, and Black Sheep is looking to invest in other projects and other points that need it. In Costa Rica, coming soon is hemp. We're going to be investing in hemp and working with Icaro on processing tens of thousands of hectares of hemp into cannabinoids and into cloth. So there are these demands from the north that we've been finding by spending time up here, going to conferences and things that make me want to not go. I don't want to go to conferences, but I didn't want to say kill myself. That's a little intense. But we've been taking the time and going to conferences and going booth to booth and stuff that my neighbor, again, is not going to do. Big barriers from passports and entry to language. Well, we're willing to employ people in that world, and we've done it.
Not only willing, but it comes down to privilege a lot of times. It's like our background and our access is different, and so I think both of us probably in our own way learned this lesson of like wanting to escape the destruction of America and the destruction of our culture and the mainstream globalized culture, and wanting to kind of run to this sort of romanticized like farmer thing, and realizing like that it's a waste for us to do that.
Well, there's a missing piece. The infrastructure of collaboration has been bought out and destroyed by centralizers. It was all co-ops before. It was all local production before, right? All of it. And you'd spend an immense amount of money and time to go get pepper from somewhere, like for real. So like, we're actually not backing up, but bouncing forward. What you said earlier, I like bouncing forward, not back, but like bouncing beyond, like adopting some of those old models with the decentralized model. So I would say we're going to keep investing in that, and I'm going to kick open every door at every bank in this world to invest in the projects that are willing that are willing not just to exist, but to do like the due diligence that it takes to prove that you're real, that you're doing something, that you're quantifying results. And that, that's something that we're here to help with too, and or help point the best consultants to people that can do that. And frankly, not just help, invest in it. We're Robin Hooding money from the north and throwing it at this. So, because it needs money, lots of it. But it doesn't need the kind of money Donald Trump says. It's not going to cost us $100 trillion to fix this world. We are going to invest probably 20 trillion and have an eternal economy out of this. It's not a black hole like he wants you to feel like it is. So we won't invest in it. It's real, and there's a return for it. I've seen it. I've seen unproductive red soil that's washing away in a few years turn into massive amounts of fruit. And if you live down there, you know it's possible. Now, Costa Rica uses 18.2 kilograms of petroleum chemicals on every productive hectarea. That is 7 times more than the U.S. uses. And that's not for us. That's for gringos to eat pineapples cheap. Sorry to be frank, but I've been upset about this. They took my forests. So we really, there's investment that has to be made. It's no joke. And there are people willing to do it. And when you can integrate like we have with trees, they help stabilize investments over time. Explaining how you integrate an orchard with vanilla, with whatever works in your region, with cacao underneath that mitigates risk across the broad spectrum of plants. And that's making investors pull the trigger. And if we have a bad couple years of rain, I can go take a few cedro trees or teak trees and make up for the loss in another part of the farm. So that's very important. It's not just a feel-good design thing. It was done in a way to mitigate risk across the board.
I'm going to open it up. I don't know if we have questions, comments, discussions. There's a lot of things that Josh put out there. Amanda?
Yeah. Sorry, we're reading the chat.
Okay, so Icaro is the name of the company that's pioneering. They've just been working with Soprona Labs and with the University of Costa Rica and the government. ICARO. I can connect you guys with them. They're working on the hemp, and they're working with what's the organization? Procomer. Procomer is implementing in like 6 Latin American countries right now with the hemp project. So we have connections all the way to Patagonia and Carhartt to supply cloth. So we're looking into investing in machines right now to make go from seed all the way to cloth. And there's a lot of demand for that. So Costa Rica we're in the Western Hemisphere, right? We're in North America. We call it Central America, but it's North America. And the markets here are having to buy all of their hemp from China, and it's really not done in the right way. And so the most passionate companies like Patagonia are trying to source from the Western Hemisphere, and Vietnam. You're right. And but when you process it into cloth, there's a lot of resins that are thrown into rivers and shit. It's not been good. So there's a reason it's happening over there and not in the States or in Central America as much. So we're actually investing in some cutting edge machinery that like reduces that pollution and turns those resins that were waste into good byproducts that we need. So there's some stuff happening really soon in Costa Rica. It's already unfolding. COVID seemed to be the nudge they needed to get into hemp. And soon THC. Hopefully that's coming right after it, because we're going to unleash a lot of investment in Costa Rica with the THC business.
Yeah.
I'm in Oregon now, and my friends are thriving here. Last month in Oregon, $85 million of THC was sold legally at the stores. So this market opened up, and it's proving out. It's paying all the school bills. It's paying all the medical bills. So we have some of the best experts in the world that are ready to come along and help implement that there. Good medicine and good clothing, good protein, and good carbon sequestration, good soil building. So it's one of my favorite plants.
Yeah, I think the clothing and fashion industry is not really something that we ever thought that we would be, or I never imagined that I would be involved in that. But it is really like, what do you use on a daily basis? Yeah. Food and the clothes that you wear. And you guys already know this, but the cloth industry in the world is so toxic. And like at every level of the supply chain, there's so much toxic stuff in the way that people are treated, the farmers as well as the people who actually assemble the clothes. So, while we're working on this regenerative agricultural revolution, we also need to keep in mind, other things that come from agriculture, which is
not just food. Yeah, food and the couches we're sitting on now, and It's like a tree to me is just a very slow motion carrot. It just takes 40 years to pick, but it's, you know, it's part of the puzzle. And it is great to think about agroforestry, not just agriculture in the food sense.
Yeah.
So that's coming. And have also, we're getting into bioplastics with that, so we can maybe stop having our beaches full of plastic that'll outlive us all.
Randall, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thanks a lot for your time explaining your projects. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. Yeah, you mentioned something about working on being decentralized, right? And I don't know if you mentioned anything about blockchain or if I missed it. But yeah, like I wanted to know if you use some type of exchange, like internal exchange between the co-op, you know, to help people pay pay for their services and use them to exchange between other associated, I don't know, producers or something. If you got anything like that working out, or you'll be looking into it.
So we were initially looking at, when you speak blockchain, it's music to my ears. I think that, you know, having some control over capital again would be great for people, right? So I'm really on board with it. But I'm also, we were looking at doing a raise using some sort of crypto tokens or something. But the deeper we got into that, the more I saw the lack of control there and the speculatory nature. So I pulled back. But I love blockchain, and I think that technology is going to open up and make this transparency thing that we want to do it right? Like using it as our internal accounting systems to internal currencies, like you said. Now, what we've done is we've used the currencies that already exist and just pay the farmers a lot better, because we leave money on the farm instead of just taking it all by the middleman, and they can use those dollars or colones to do what they need for their families. But as the technology comes along more, as we are bigger and need it, we need more developers in that world. We are looking for people that can help us implement those simple, seamless international ways to move money around without having to keep banks in the game. And in Costa Rica, we know the pain of banks that don't always do what they're expected to do.
You're in jointseeds.com. Look it up.
Yep.
So
I'm interested. Let's keep talking about, because what we've been doing is we've been creating this physical thing that has the value. Now I want to make sure that we lay that software over it that helps not only decipher the value, but make it available to more distributed ways. Now, we've been using normal LLC laws in US and down there, SAA laws, and we've been giving shares of our companies out and broadly distributing that. And people who do work for us end up getting the same amount of shares as one who might invest $10,000. So we reward labor expertise. We reward all the way down to the childcare that we need to do the job together. It's all being rewarded in a form of ownership. Would I like that to be done with crypto or blockchain? Yes, I would. I don't want to go to jail, so I'm avoiding the clink in the securities world by following their rules. But what that's done, the SEC has really helped us map out the kind of company that we need to the details and the due diligence of the company that would do that with the SEC can be the ones that will lead the way in blockchaining properly. So I'd like to be able to do that. And what was your question there? I saw it pop up and go away.
Yeah, you know, I would like to show you about a blockchain and cryptocurrency project if you want later on. That I think is very promising. It's kind of new and promises a lot for the things that you're interested in.
It really leaves money on the ground for the people in my community, and as long as it isn't, I've really had a hard time with, you know, studying.
Something happened to your mic, Josh.
What?
Something happened to your mic. It has.
Oh, is it better?
A little bit.
Okay, something buzzed in. I'm being a student of history makes me kind of terrified of creating currency. If there's one thing you can learn from history, it's money hasn't really been done right yet. Even all the way back to gold, it was, you know, hoarded wrong. So I'm interested in all of that, helping remedy that and create the open source and transparent future we need for sure. So I'd love to visit your technology and look at it. And we've got a lot of people in the Bay Area that are very excited about this, and we'd love to do some collaboration so that we do the best thing possible, not just, you know, I don't know. There's some pitfalls there that have scared me, like speculation and people controlling the price of your company. And yeah, it's tough. I don't know how to deal with that yet. So if you know who does, let's talk.
Your mic is still not good.
We can,
Maybe mute it.
but it was okay before.
Is that better?
No.
Dang it! Somebody cut in with like a phone call and it tried to. Okay, let me just do this. Sorry.
It's like there's a electronic voice instead of your voice.
Oh, it might be the reception.
Is that okay now?
It's a bit better, I think.
Okay.
It's probably our
So
reception.
yeah, I'd love to follow through on that blockchain talk if anybody wants to get in touch with us. We've got the physical stuff. I'd like to make sure we can quantify it all.
We'll do that, Josh. We have still quite a bit of time, so it's open to questions, comments.
And we have a big team too. If there's people that have very direct questions about what we're doing on the ground on the farms, I would very much invite you to go to the farm and spend an afternoon with Steven and Esteban and Carlos and them. I mean it.
Yeah, please come and see how it's done.
Let us make lunch for you and talk about it and walk around.
There are a lot of people here from New Zealand, from Peru, from Estonia.
I can send you some videos and I'll send you some videos, but you know, there's people out there all over that know this work. And actually I can hook you up with people that live locally near you that are doing the same kind of thing as me. Maybe aren't as good at projecting it out there to the world.
I think someone asked a question in the chat.
Let's go back. Yep, I might mess up our sound again.
It says, could you quantify your success?
Okay, so quantifying our success. Right now, we're bringing our first retail products to market this month. Co-packers are finishing up the bottling, and we're about to start selling up here. Over the years, we've had quantified success because we've turned hundreds of acres of cattle land into forests that are functioning and feeding us. Now to the next level where we're selling it in large quantity in the market. That starts this month. So it's, yeah, please do. Yeah, we'd be happy to show you guys as we start doing sales this next month. We'll be posting our results. So we have $400,000 worth of product to sell this starting in June, July. And every year on our farms and in the co-ops that we've kind of planned out over the next several years is to process a couple million pounds a year through our process. And that creates about $20 million in value-added goods. So yeah, I'd be happy to, if you want to dig into my pro forma, anybody that wants to, let's follow up here, maybe in one email or something from Edward and the team. Fernanda is, if I get your email address and your first and last name, I will send you access to our data vault. You can really chip into the numbers.
Yeah, and when our retail brand launches, which should be about near the end of July or mid-July, we will definitely let everybody know.
Please buy our first few products. I'm going to send you a link. Buy some of our regenerative goods. Yeah, so that's how we're measuring success. I mean, in the first 10 years, the success came in really seeing and feeling the jungle come back. Now, you can tell the success by doing soil samples, seeing how water runs through the farm year-round instead of drying up. We are a big green patch in the middle of summer when everybody around us is like getting brown and all their cows break in. You can tell by how many cows break in how wet our land is compared to our neighbors. So it's very interesting. And our whole road, in fact, between these two national parks, I can drive to town and back now every day without a landslide.
Yeah.
When I first got there, there would be 20 landslides across the road in one storm. It would take 5 days to clear it, then a storm would come and do it again.
You have to bring 2 tires.
I've changed the tire once to town, once on the way home. I haven't changed the tire in the last 5 years because, in large part, because the two national parks have been joining, and our valley, when you come right over into our valley from the valley right before it, between Budiscal and Gundea, you turn right and head towards Canada National Park on our road. And you probably tried to avoid that road before, by the way. Now there's landslides no more. Once a year, maybe one. And that's because of trees. That's because of water absorbing better. I mean, y'all maybe you don't know this to everybody out there, but a full-size jungle tree will have 100,000 liters of water in it at any time. And there's 1,000 of those on a hectare. So when they're gone, you imagine how much water is running by. Well, those are very short-term and quantifiable goals, or not short-term, but those happened to us pretty quick, and they were physical. I didn't really need papers to explain that. Now, we're working with Regen Network, and they're working on a pilot project with us to use the European Space Agency to quantify all of the organic material from space and the biodiversity, and even sending drones down once a year to go around and take a really detailed map and count every plant. So that's happening too, to help people from New Zealand understand what's happening in Costa Rica and building like trustless systems where you actually get to look at it and you get to look at it yourself and see it, or you get to see it quantified through a system, not just like, hey, I planted a tree in your name.
We're still in development phase with Regen, so no, you can't see it yet.
Yeah, but you talk to Christian, please.
Yeah.
I'm happy to connect you guys to Regen if you don't know them. Christian is amazing, and they're doing it. They're out on the warpath right now. Great.
I was going to say, I think another way to quantify our success, at least in the long term, is how well we can uphold and adhere to our original principles, which those are kind of characterized by permaculture, but it's, broad ownership of land shared by a diverse group of people, protecting the earth, regenerating it, obviously, and proving that this model actually works in that it can feed people and support people.
Now we'll have the next level when we sell a bunch of product to the big world here over the next months. We'll answer that on a different level. Oh, and I've never had anything stolen. Be a gringo in my area and have a bunch of stuff. I don't have any locks or windows. You leave everything open. So some of that is just the social stuff works because I love my neighbors. They're my family. I don't know how else to quantify that.
They're all really good people. That's what doesn't stolen. They're awesome.
Hello.
I have.
Oh, so go, Alessandra, go ahead.
You can go, Christopher, please.
I was just thinking about what you were talking about with quantifying your success, and we've also been learning that the soft skills are really important too. So in that, what I'm wondering is that possibly could quantify your success too by minds change. So for example, within governments and other institutions, people that are really sort of much more economically driven. I'm just wondering, what has your experience been with those groups that usually can, write something off as per dollar values or colones in this respect?
Well, luckily in Costa Rica, the government's been 100% on board. They've been pushing us.
At least our local government. It doesn't mean the whole government's perfect, but
I was in a hotel one night and I met the president's right-hand lady, and she gave us $250,000 to plant more biofuels trees and try them out as fence posts and see how it worked. So, and we distributed that to 40 farmers. So I get nothing but love all the way up to the president's office so far. And that doesn't, I don't do a lot of work with them, but a little bit I have has been great. When it comes to changing people's minds,
I think that's the business world is probably where these lessons are learned. Yeah. And I think when we're able to prove that a regenerative agricultural system or regenerative systems are just as good, if not better, than these extractive ones, that's when it's really proved. And so we've been able to get a couple of those kinds of people on board. Sorry, hold on, our phone is dying. To join our team and believe in us. But it's been an interesting process because both of us are like, tree hugging hippies, and in that culture, it's sort of like money is this dirty word, but we've really had to figure out how to speak the language of money and not lose our souls at the same time, so that we can present this to people who really actually only understand the language of economics and wealth.
And also not risk alienating them from the process too, in a way, right?
Exactly, because they are powerful, and why not give them an opportunity to do the right thing? And I think there's some level of like, people want to hold on to this sense of purity, and I like that. Like I would never want to like sacrifice our values, but I also want to enable big companies to make good decisions, and not just like greenwashing bullshit decisions, like actual good decisions. Like, I don't care if the Walton family at the end of all this is still very wealthy people, but as long, if they're empowering and sharing their wealth and making good business decisions, then I don't care. So it's not about like punishing people or companies or whatever. It's not about punishing or isolating. It's about just solving the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, and we've had people over the years come who are like very much business people, and one thing that has helped is we stay open. We have a thriving school there too. We have kids come from all over the world. People come from Northeastern University and do education there. You do 6-month co-ops. And this one thing that's really done is just staying open and succeeding year after year. You get like these, like the libertarian-minded folks come through, and they love us. I've been told 12 times by old white guys that I'm their favorite hippie, and they've never seen anything expressed in reality that works by the left or whatever. I don't mean to be too political, but I'm a strong leftist, and to run a business that way, it impresses my right-wing and libertarian friends and colleagues out there that we stay open, that we're doing business, that we make money with what we do.
Environmentalism is practical. It's not just like, we love baby animals and forests and magic. It's like, no, we have to live here.
Well, I personally am an
I love magic. Yeah.
I'm as atheist as it gets, so I try to connect all the words in a very secular way. But what we've done is really try to talk about unity, not uniformity, and that impresses people, that we're about unifying under ideals and ethics, not trying to just be all the same. And there may be sort of a bit of historical precedent there that people that go off grid and do these things are a certain type of crazy, but we went down there to really research and dive in and be a part of it completely. So you can really feel that when people of means come along, they see it, they know that it works because it works. It's physically there and it stays open, and we don't get subsidized by governments. We don't get subsidized when we have a market collapse. Small businesses just die, you know? So being a small businessman and woman that stay open is one of those things that's impressing people. And we're 14 years into our project, no bankruptcies and no debt. So we've stayed out of debt, which has also been a tool that lets us make better decisions, right? And gets us into profitability, and we get to, when we do take debt, it might be something internally from a tribe or from a shareholder, but then they get to partake in those interest payments and stuff. So education in the community. I also saw another question right before this about Putiscal. So the farm we bought there was just this completely deforested cattle and pig farm. And we started doing forestry work on there, and I went into it a bit earlier, but it really unfolded beautifully into a 20-acre spot of of mixed polyculture orchards with really thriving soil. And that became the kind of replicable farm model or soil building model that we're replicating now on the new farms, on Shangri-Lanis and in Amarado Cacao, and next on a few other farms down the road near Galan. So we're growing there. But the first farm in Putiscal it was a 20 acres of cut down, had 2 creeks going through it that would dry up half the year. Now it has several springs popping out, even in the middle of the living room of one of the homes we built, because we did such reforestation above that springs pop out in my house. But that main farm became the example. We live in a region where we get 20 feet of rain a year, and about half of that comes in 1 month. So figuring out how to manage that was an immediate goal. Just to keep the house open and not sliding down a hill. So we chose that region in part, Eduardo said it, because it was such a challenge. And if you can't go there, I have a lot of media back I can dig up and find and send you guys some stuff.
So
I'll read the next question. Role of education. So education, you speak on education.
No, you.
You should.
Okay.
So we kind of by default became an education center. It wasn't really the initial goal. It was that people really wanted to come to Costa Rica, and they wanted to do it in a way that wasn't like a normal tourist. There was a real there's a hypocrisy in green tourism that people don't like.
Yeah, there's an extraction. There's a very large level of extraction in the ecotourism world, where you can only have ecotourism if you also have heavily extracted areas, and they kind of unfortunately go hand in hand, because there's this it immediately divides the world into this dualistic thing where there's it's being destroyed, we have to save it. So Costa Rica is very much in that paradigm of extraction and an environmental push to save and conserve resources. So I think your question was about education within the local Llanos community. At least that's how I read it. And that's been an interesting process, because like I was saying before, we've kind of in order to kind of keep the lights on, especially in the early years, we've had to play in the game of ecotourism. That's a thing that I think a lot of environmental projects find themselves in.
There's a lawnmower. We're gonna go inside.
So, did you just hang up? Sorry guys. Okay, sorry about that. We've had to kind of play in the world of, or participate in the world of ecotourism, whether we really wanted to or not. So on some level, our clientele that was accessible to us was English-speaking people. So as we've gotten more resources and we're able to be more of the company that we want to be, we're able to branch out more and actually have educated teachers who speak Spanish as well as English to cater not just to like people on vacation, but to the community members that we love and care about and want to work with. So we've always made an effort to give subsidy to Costa Ricans and other people from Central and South America, because there's that clear need to address that on some level. Like, it's always been kind of a weird feeling for us to be like catering to wealthy foreigners.
Well, but there's another side to that coin, which is this.
Right.
I didn't come to Costa Rica to lecture farmers.
Right.
And I didn't come there to educate my neighbors. And that there's a lot of people that do that, and I don't do that. We came to collaborate, to work together and listen and work and figure out the best solutions and bring what we had to the game. Now, so education mostly comes because most of our neighbors end up working with us over the years, whether it be short, long term on their farms or ours. And we integrate education into that. So our students don't come and like do an abstract classroom thing. They're coming and observing our business and our function and studying that with us and helping where they can. So a lot of it's very active, more like co-op type education. It's people coming from a university and putting in 6 months as an intern with us. And when they do that, it's going to mean all the way, it also educates Carlos next door, because Carlos is getting just as much out of that relationship. He'll teach them how to dig holes and put trees in the ground and how to take care of the soil, how to build forests. And at the same time, he's had an amazing experience of 4,000 people from all over the world coming in and feeding it back. So it's really not like we went out of our way to educate locals. I don't do that. I have ideas and I implement them. We have projects that we do them. We collaborate with neighbors if they want. We show up when our neighbors ask for things and need them, and they do when they really do, and we're there for them. And everybody gets to partake in this education with us. So if one of our neighbors is great at something, they'll come and be a part of this class with us. They'll come and teach the foreigners. They'll come and teach the city ticos that have never been to the jungle. In fact, I think more of my American friends that have come down have spent way more time in the jungle than your average Costa Rican kid in the city. So we get a lot of Costa Rican kids showing up at 19, and they're more blown away by the jungle than foreigners. So there's a real like openness to this. It hasn't. Our program that Amanda really designed with Northeastern is one piece of it. But really, it's just the collaborative working together, all the way down to picking fruit together and processing it together, all the way down to someone understanding when they go back to their New York job or back to San Francisco, that they understand what they're asking of people when they ask for the tropics to be reforested. They understand what the sun is, what the rain is, what the snakes are. So I think the education is really deep in just getting people to cross cultures and like try and understand each other. Mm-hmm. And more than we have something to teach you. I don't like that.
Hey, I just wanted to ask a question. Oh, first of all, thank you. It's been really inspiring to listen to your story. And I really liked how integral all is, like very holistic view. And I guess I'm now curious about the one thing that I think that we haven't mentioned, and is that if I'm not wrong, like Puriscal, there's still like indigenous settlements really close to it, right? And I was just, yeah, and Kitirisi as well, I think, those are close. And, because you were like thinking, like talking about history and about the future, and it feels like you're kind of like connecting the land in so many levels, that I was wondering if there's any element in your project that includes like these, I don't know, like to honor, this part of the history of the land,
Yes, but again, it's a delicate walk for white kids from the U.S. to act like it's really about enabling and pulling what Amanda said earlier. It's more about what we don't do. We don't extract. We relieve the pressure. We teach the people. I think the people I can have the biggest impact on is the people that I most relate to, which are white kids from Oregon or New York or San Francisco. When they come, I hope they'll lessen their footprint on the indigenous around the world. I hope they'll respect how much work it is to bring nature back, and respect that we are emulating. What we do is emulate the pre-Columbian agricultural systems, and then preach those systems as like a value in what we can learn from the indigenous, not just from an indigenous person with their myths or whatever they have to teach us, but with what they thrived in this land with 100 million people from Alaska to Chile, right? There was thriving before there was machetes and chainsaws and petrochemicals. And so I'm honoring that in the way that we can. I read Edward Galeano, and I make every young gringo read Open Veins of Latin America. I want people to feel that and understand it, but not. We only have had one indigenous man live on our road in the whole time I've been there, and he died a few years ago, and he was the last man on our road that was really indigenous. And in Zapatone, there's a great little community. And what I could do best is, man, please, if you're on this call and you come from somewhere else, do not buy chemical-made coffee. Do not buy chemical bananas, and do not buy chemical pineapples. That's one of the ways you can really save my indigenous neighbors without having to, like, I don't know what the word would be. I try not to do it. What's it called? I don't know, put myself on social media and saying, oh, I help indigenous folks. I'm not trying to, what's the word? Anyway.
Like, I don't know, being like a white savior
Yeah,
or like some kind of like performative activism. I think that I think there's more that we can do. That's something that I'm excited to branch out into and connect more with indigenous communities in Costa Rica. I've personally never visited one, and it's a thing that's been on my mind a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can develop those relationships. And in any kind of situation where there are indigenous young people that want to learn, like, I'm all about giving subsidy to that and supporting them as much as possible, because we really are, like, all of our agricultural techniques, like, while they're informed by Western ideas and Western developed science, like, these are indigenous techniques. Agroforestry is an indigenous idea, so there's a lot of connection there, and it really needs to come full circle on that level.
It's a huge thing though up here in the U.S. as well to honor that. We're in Oregon right now. Everything around me has indigenous names, and I moved away for a long time, and I kind of forgot that I get back here and the signs are all like indigenous words, and we need to figure out how to do that better everywhere. So let's collaborate on doing that right, without being. I don't know. It's an interesting one, huh? Yeah.
Oh, Edward,
Yeah, there's a question from Esteban in the chat saying, what is your dream now? How do you foresee your project in 10 years?
Okay, so there's different projects, right? From the farms on the ground, I would love them to see. I would love to see more of my neighbors move back to the campo. Their kids stay there instead of going to the city to work for Intel. I would love the system to show up a little more and make sure that there's this better school out there and there's some internet. But those are little details. Our bigger project, 10 years out, that we're a $500 million a year co-op of co-ops around the whole world, feeding huge amounts of what used to go to Walmart to this better supply chain. That we have dozens of more farms like us replicating this thing in the way they do best where they're at, and that we're learning from them, and then implementing there and investing in those points. I would love to see processing centers of the sort that we're doing for whatever one needs in their region. I want to invest in a dozen more of those in Costa Rica and 100 more of them in Latin America and in the US as well. So we're going to grow into that. We're already growing into farming up here in the States as well to blend the products that make retail products for people. Those granola bars need pieces from all over the world, maybe. So we're happy to keep growing this in more countries too. But Costa Rica is my passion. I chose that country for a lot of personal reasons, and I want everything I do in the beginning to really really, in the first 10 years or the next 10 years to really affect the farmers in our region. And let's see about 1,000 more jaguars in Costa Rica. How about that? So we've seen jaguars come back in our region. They're going between the national parks now. I think they could go the other way. They could go up to Guatemala and Nicaragua too. So let's keep connecting these zones. And our food productive farms will be an integral part of forests, which in 10 years, what I've already seen in the last 10 years in my valley, if we could invest $1 billion in Costa Rican agroforestry, we could transform the food system in Costa Rica in 10 years. And it would transform our forest. It would be unbelievable, the difference when you fly over or drive over on 239 from San Jose to the beach. It would look like a forest again. Now it would be young, but it will. So we're going to do all we can to raise $1 billion and invest in Costa Rica.
Thank you for those book recommendations,
Yeah.
by the way.
We throw one thing in our farm education is people get time to read. We'll work hard in the mornings. We blow a conch at 5:30 in the morning and wake all the gringos up, and we and then we're done working by about noon because it's too hot. So people have time to read, and any books that one ever wants to leave with us, it's what I really love to do to young and old alike, is give them a chance to reflect and read.
I have a question. Maybe you only produce turmeric for selling, but you also produce other products for your own consume, like in the farm or.
Yeah, well, and in our region, it's very limited on, I can't grow onions where I'm at, so I need Cartago for onions. So we don't try and grow everything, but we're fitting in the stuff that grows well down there that doesn't require a lot of inputs. We're really about the lowest input, highest output stuff. I'm trying to figure out how that works. So
turmeric is the first of many things that we plan on bringing to the market, but we produce quite a few things that we actually consume on site and share in our community.
And there's a lot of things though that at the wrong scale, they're not even worth doing. Like we grow sacha inchi. You don't know that nut. It's a really great seed. It's full of omegas. But if you all wanted to sit down with me and Amanda right now and de-shell them and roast them, it would take 4 of us 10 hours to get 2 kilos done, right? But with the right machinery invested in like the cracking of the shells and the extracting the oil and the toasting it at scale, that crop grows like a weed, and it's a fundamental shift for a farm to be able to grow that and get it to market. So we have all these other, from cacao to sacha inchi to jackfruit, bread nut, breadfruit, guanabana, it's all mixed together. And we're building our facility has also got a section that's for extracting essential oils and oleo resins from plants. So we're going to experiment more and more once we have these machines with more and more of the plants that grow in good polyculture with the things that we have, and develop more of those, even if it's smaller scale. Having $1 million extraction piece of equipment that's like Pfizer level nutraceutical that we only need to use for 3 or 4 months a year, it allows us this other 7, 8, 9 months a year to go and shove other products through there and help other farms. So vanilla and black pepper, and these are all things we've been developing over the years. Vanilla is one of the big ones. The world's about 50% of the way. We have about 50% of what we need for those kind of things, and Costa Rica can grow them. So we're really leaning on the highest value things that we can do extractions from.
Susan.
Thank you.
Anyways, when it comes to food production there, it's very difficult to grow a bunch of varieties like of garden foods in the jungle. It's very hard. You end up with a very limited diet, especially in the hardcore wet season. So we're developing more and more like hydroponics and systems over the years to feed ourselves. But I love going into town and supporting the organic farmers market and buying from other farmers. I don't think of sustainability as my farm. I am not a boat alone. We are tethered to everyone, and tomatoes don't grow well where I'm at, so I buy them from Cartago.
My question was if I could get a little review of your projects. I was like 5 minutes late, and you guys were like already going at it. I missed a few things, but also, I mean, there's like so many like brilliant tidbits that I've gotten, but I just want to try to pull them all back together for my brain that moves a little slower than the pace that this has been going. So to kind of repeat your story as I understand it, you came down And at first it was like, we're going to just heal this land. We're going to grow the soil back. We're going to stabilize the soil. And little by little, you started, did you already know about agroeconomy, agroforestry? So
Not
you
really.
learned that by
So,
programs.
sorry, what?
Was the
You're
last
going
one?
to learn that through government programs.
Yes. So just to gloss through it really quickly, in 2006, Josh left the United States with his family and a couple of really good family friends. Yeah. And bought land in Lanas de Puriscal in a very deforested region of Costa Rica, just to have a place where his family could be and have a farm and have a family and friend center. And a lot of these ideas sprang kind of out of that, as far as I understand. And then, so that's Verde Energia. That's the first farm. And that right now looks like an education center and an eco lodge and kind of the epicenter of a lot of these like farming experimentations and community building that we've been working on. I came to the project later in 2013, I came to visit Verde Energia and work.
And do natural building. She wanted to build with
I wanted to learn about natural building. And during that year, there was a palm oil company wanted to buy the land above Verde, where its water came from, and they wanted to build a palm oil plantation, and they were going to spray it with a bunch of.
They were going to cut it down completely.
Yeah, they were going to do not good stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of this like sense of urgency of like, oh crap, like everything's going to get poisoned, or we have to figure out how to buy this land. And our neighbor that owned the land obviously liked us a little bit better, so he kind of like gave them a nudge and was like, hey, like, I don't want to sell this land, but I don't want to sell it to these guys. Like, you want to buy it? So, like, real quick, Josh and our other shareholders of Verde Energia came together and organized to buy this land out from under this.
I had like $10 in my pocket at the time.
Yeah.
$10.
So they came together to buy the land out from under them and formed this other farm that we refer to as Shangri-Lanas. It became clear that people were like, it's not just about the isolated little farm anymore. Like that, it kind of just blew the doors open on that. And it became very, very clear that, you know, just because this one little area of land and like our water is safe, like, you know, the palm oil companies are going to come down the road to our other neighbor and be like, hey, like knock down their door. And the campo itself is being drained of people, and people want to leave because there's not a lot of opportunities, and people are dying from agrochemical ingestion. So it became clear that we needed to find a way to formalize this process, and that's when we formed Black Sheep, which is the mechanism to bring all of the products that can be grown from agroforestry and rehabilitating rainforest, bring those to market, as well as help local farmers. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, Black Sheep is that piece that we needed as a small farm. And it's the piece my neighbor was asking for. And then I heard another neighbor ask for this other piece. And we were really just planting forest when we got there. Like you said, what was the initial thing? Let's plant trees, let's have a forest. And let's make it edible. Why not? And those fruit trees grow faster. So they go out there and they grew first, and my neighbors knew what to do with those, although I've been asked 5 million times by my employees to spray chemicals because that's what they're used to doing. So day to day, it was a struggle of like sitting down and talking to my employee about how I'm willing to fail, which doesn't make sense to somebody who's in real poverty. Yeah. And I was in a different kind of poverty. I was broke. Like I'm just broke at the time. He was more like poverty mindset of like, you can't fail or it's over. And I'm like, you will never get fired because we fail growing organics. We're here together to do this. So in the beginning, it was really confusing to many of our neighbors of why we were willing to keep trying to grow an orange tree and not put chemicals on it. So those lessons grew together and then as you'd have it worked, something would work, and then a beauty would grow out of that. And it came tree at a time, or it came species of plant at a time, or it came meter at a time of soil getting better. And then it started to work. And also kept showing up with investment and putting it there for real, not just intention, but money. And so we've invested in those ideas. Some of them were dead ends, many of them.
And so those investments, I mean, you had to get that land and you had $10 in your pocket. those investments they were coming from the people who were coming to your, basically your nature center that you have there. They
That's how
were
it started, friends of friends, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And then people would come and they'd fall in love with it. And then we called them that year when they were like, they'd seen Verde growing. They'd invested. They'd come to Verde 10 years ago. And then I call them and say, hey, the farm above us is going to clear cut and poison everything. And me as an activist is going to go to prison because I'm not going to let that happen. So like, there was a moment where it was like, we reached out to our whole community. And luckily at that moment, there had been a documentary series just released by Harrison Ford and Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was called Years of Living Dangerously. And the first 2 episodes are really about palm oil and what's happening in Borneo. And that couldn't have come out at a better time for what we needed. Timing is as important as any good idea being real. And a bunch of people had just seen that, and I sent it out to people and said, like, this is very real, and we've got a chance now to do something practical. So within a few weeks, we had 20 people come together and each throw in $5,000-$10,000. You know, not too much from any one person. We created a LLC there that owns it. They own it as an equal partners, and 4 local partners that are doing the work on the farm, they're getting equal shares as well as they work for it, if they choose. They don't have to. They can take it in cash too. So there's a choice. There's also, that's an important thing to say. Don't bounce around too much, but I showed up wanting to like everybody to be owners and participate. That's not what one neighbor wants to do. So I'm not there to force them. So it's about consent and sovereignty at the same time, right? So that's sort of how that blossomed and why we grew into Black Sheep. I might have been happy for 25 more years wearing a sarong and running around building houses out of mud. It was fun. It's a lot of fun. And my parents moved there with me, and my daughter and I've had 4,000 of my friends and family come participate, and students and lovers and everybody, right? Just everybody in the community. And that I could have done that 25 more years, but I don't like looking at the young people that come through my project and have to go back and work for Pfizer with their science. They went into science for whatever reason. It wasn't to work for Raytheon and put missiles into a front room accurately. So I realize I have a responsibility as a person who's got the guts to take risk, as a person that's got the guts to go out and rally funds and do things, and to offer the opportunities necessary and the collaborative opportunities necessary for the young, beautiful people coming out of college with all this talent that want to be bankers, that want to be politicians, that want to do that, and they don't want to be corrupted, or they don't want to feel that way. So I feel the responsibility to hire scientists. I feel the responsibility to find the best people and give them the best opportunities. But that's the risk taker entrepreneur in me. The farms themselves, I don't take that risk with them. They're safe little projects that aren't in debt, that grow what they grow and do what they do and get some investment when they need it, and have to produce if they want to stay open. But this other entity was created so we can take those big swings.
And yes, Christopher, that is our website. We have a new one coming out very soon, but that is our current website.
Yeah. And
Amanda said
more here. Thank you. But just a little bit more about Black Sheep. So just to make sure I understood, basically you got investment to get things like machines that would allow a harvest to be processed.
Yep, correct.
And then your farm and neighboring farms can use that, and then you take the product to market.
That's correct. And we have our own market because we've developed our own regenerative brand that wants to buy X amount a year for its retail products. But we're also now getting into the private labeling and white labeling world where companies that don't, like Sacha Inchi oil, for example, places like Trader Joe's, for example, we don't need our name on it, but we're happy to support all the farms and do that as a private label. So that's all opening now so that we can reach into these networks and have demand. At the same time, we're getting massive demand from like being an ingredients company as well. There's co-packers that abound up here that make the products for everyone. And co-packers are kind of that funnel point where they buy the ingredients. So we're getting into the co-packing world and responding to their needs. So they say, hey, we really need a lot of this in the next 5 years, a ton of demand. Well, call us next time you have a bid. It's a regenerative product. And the way we've done vertical integration, we're priced cheaper than most organic products even. So like we can compete. And that's really where the magic is. Don't just say you're doing good and have something that only a San Francisco buyer can afford. And I don't mean to pick on San Francisco and New York, but they can buy things by choice for more expensive, where if you live in Medford, Oregon, where I grew up in the 70s, you can't. So the organic choice needs to be affordable. I grew up poor white trash. I want poor white trash to be able to afford my products. So like that is sort of one of the drum beats in the middle of all this, and something that this investment allows. Now, we've been taking accredited investors' money for the last year only. Up until that point, it was anywhere from time, someone's donated time and expertise, to about $10,000. That's the most we took. And they would buy shares of the corporation in Costa Rica with us and own part of that SAR. Now with the US company, they're buying equity in that company. We're doing it through a thing called a convertible note. So we'll pay an investor like 10% a year if they want out in 3 years on their money, or they can convert it to equity at a good discount for taking the risk with us in the early years. So I'd be happy to send you access to this POM and my whole data vault.
Yeah.
I mean that, and please dive into it and ask a lot of questions, because there's a lot of that depth that we can't do here. It's just, and honestly, I'd put you on the phone with my accountant and have him walk you through it if you've got that kind of money. No, but it's important, because it's the magic of this is the competitiveness. And you know, anybody could go make a high-end product and do the best, but it may cost 10 times more than the next one, right? We're doing this all in. We're like $6 into our final retail product, bottled and everything. $6 is even with like paying to sell it, and we sell it for 28, and that's competitive on Amazon with the non-organics or the non-regenerative versions of our products. So as we grow now, it just gets better and better. Our scale of economy it's making it cost less. And as we can buy the next bigger piece of equipment that costs 5 times as much, it uses 10 times less energy. So these things like the cost of goods go way down over time. So you have to be able to play in that scale of economy world. But I do not want one farmer in the developing world to go bust on debt again, because that is a horrible, horrible thing from history that's going to damage us forever. Already has. So like we're doing this without debt on the land, and that's important. So that's one of the reasons we created that investment thing. And when we started our company Black Sheep, we were initially going to call it Black Sheep Divestments, but that sounded a little negative. So we're a regenerative resource management company. What was that question there? Sorry, it went away.
You're welcome. I think Esteban asked who would become upset if we became a real success, and then Chris had a follow-up. I don't think that we, or actually, okay, so addressing Chris's follow-up to Esteban's first, we haven't gained the attention of enough like major like evil players that
we've upset the palm oil company to try to buy the land around us.
Right, but I would say that we're probably going to end up messing with large agricultural companies that spray poison on things and want to keep people enslaved in debt systems.
And we're also running into Weyerhaeuser and Georgia Pacific as people that won't want us to succeed.
As well as ranchers.
Yeah.
Ranchers in Costa Rica. Although we would much rather just make friends and. But
300 people like us get murdered every year in South and Central America, being activists on the front line by ranchers and by people like, so it's a real deal down there. It's a serious question. It's not just, are we competing against Walton's family and do they hate us? It's, am I upsetting a guy down the road who might kill me for stopping a land deal? Like for real. Like that, people protect turtles in Costa Rica get killed on the beach for real. So like that would be that's a bigger physical concern than pissing off Procter & Gamble.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm happy to supply ingredients to Procter & Gamble. Let's do it. And we're getting asked. There are some big companies that you can consider our competitors that are actually doing some things right, like Mars Corporation. By the way, I'm kind of emulating some of their business practices. They've done some great things. So, our competitors, and by the way, companies are fluid. People change all the time.
Right.
So people that are mad at me now work at a different company next year. So
exactly. And like with Mars Chocolate, they were involved in the cacao like child slavery thing in Africa. So we're definitely not emulating
no.
that.
But there's been some corporations that have done different types of sourcing and taken care of co-ops. So we're trying to learn from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Appropriate technologies, and I'm not afraid of the big companies. Before I was locking myself to their logging trucks, and it seemed like I was directly confronting them, but it's because they were cutting down the trees that they weren't legally allowed to cut right next to me, so I protected them. Now we're not just protecting those trees, we're growing enough of them that if they want to be customers and collaborate, we're happy to.
I think it's moving away from only calling people out to also calling them in.
Yeah.
It's a nice little.
But Monsanto needs to go down, and they are poisoning my neighbors. Monsanto needs to die as a company. They've murdered a lot of people with their products, and I lose neighbors on my road to cancer in their colon and their stomachs. And that's because of Monsanto products. So like I take that shit seriously. They're not a company I want to collaborate with, but and they want to own all the genetics and seeds and own the life in this planet. So, you know, Bayer, Monsanto, you'll get me amen on that.
Yeah.
Esteban.
Okay. Thank you very much for this amazing and inspirative word. And forgive me, my English is very broken.
That's okay.
What we need is we have to show that in Costa Rica we are prepared to serve as an example for other countries. Not only your country, but in Latin America. We need a lot of models of success that inspire that regenerative agriculture is really the way to go. After this coronavirus, we need to show everybody that there is a new way of doing things that will save us for something much more dangerous than the pandemic coronavirus, which is the future that our kids are going to suffer if we don't change agriculture.
Yeah.
So thank you for
You know, it's also not in the future. It's that we're already suffering. The biodiversity loss. I've been digesting this the last few weeks, and we've been having really deep conversations about racism in the States. And it's not even just about the evil you're fighting. It's about the beauty we don't even understand we've lost. So I don't put collapse into the future anymore. We are in utter collapse with the environment. We are in utter collapse with our morality. We don't seem to care that 30,000 kids die of disease of diarrhea every day, like in this world. So I take that it's not being negative, but man, it's now. It is now. And COVID has exposed a lot of things in the food industry. They're slaughtering millions of pigs in the U.S. right now, because there's no processors that could open in time. Like those big systems failed us when we needed them most, when we had a problem, when we had an emergency. So we need to pull out our plans to do it. Costa Rica has put its mouth there and its money there, saying it's going to be a leader in the world. I chose Costa Rica in part because they want to be leaders. And that is important. And we've already led. Costa Rica's already led it's a different model, right? You go Nicaragua, you go to Panama, you know it immediately how different it is.
Costa Rica
we could do better on our road construction, but you know what I mean. So it's like I'm there for a reason, and it's about the size of a small U.S. state, and you can make a difference in a small state. Tackling this bear of the U.S. government, I don't even know, but the last few weeks has taught me one thing: intensity can be just as powerful as money. So we're bringing intensity along with the good money practice, right?
And that's our mission. We have to understand that the mission of Costa Rica now is to show another way of doing things.
Yep.
Seriously.
And invest in it for real. We can invest in it. And in the agricultural space, there's so many efficiencies to be had immediately, and you can grow. We grow the most beautiful pineapples organically. It can be done. So we could grow half as many pineapples, process them right, have the forest come back, and have it all. We can have it all. We just have to we need to step out of this wasteful supply chain and into the right one, the one that would be
abundance.
Yeah, that's right. But it's an investment. It's not just an ethereal, right? We have to do it. And I'm in Costa Rica for a reason. I mean, I'm in the States for, because of COVID right now, but I'm in Costa Rica in my heart for a reason.
No, and one of the things that I talked with Josh before he left, and I can't believe it's already that long.
Time flies, huh?
Yeah, it was only going to be about 6 months. Is replicate this. I'd love to see, for example, in Susan's project in Ojancha, to have a food forest growing there.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that diversity, and get the restaurants and the hotels to diversify. It's not only Gallo Pinto, We'll have to have tourists stay there for a month at a time now. People won't want to fly so often anymore. So we have to reinvent tourism. Yeah. There's no other way better to reinvent tourism than to have all this living, conscious experience and a high diversity, agrobiodiversity, even the cuisine. I mean, we can innovate in bringing back all these delicious food that we used to eat 100 years ago.
Yeah.
In these food farms. That's what I see our role, even in the Regenerative Costa Rica process. to get this and replicate it all over the country and have abundance. I mean, we're taught in a world of scarcity, and it can be very abundant.
Yeah, you know, and what you just said is important because there's a lot of tourism in Costa Rica, even internally now, probably more for a while, right? People will be traveling inside the country like we are already in the U.S. But one of the valuable things about tourism in our deep hearts, about moving to walking over a hill to another community, it was to try something different. It wasn't to eat McDonald's wherever you go. Like at the fundamental level, travel was like to try something new or to get something different. And, you know, every time I eat rice and beans in Costa Rica, I remember that we're in a colonized place, that we're not eating the peyuaye and the kind of stuff that would grow there naturally. Although we still do eat some of that. I'm really on with that, like the localizing those food and showcasing it. And while I, you know, I don't love things like, I don't really love things like that festival that happens at the beach in Costa Rica Vision every year. We would go there and serve our organic farm goods to these tourists while they're in the country. And just a little bit of the money that came into that country stuck at the farm more. It didn't just go to Walmart. It didn't go back to the US for a Snickers. It came for a little piece of chocolate we made. And those little things made a big difference. Even our little booth would sell $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 worth of rice, beans, and cabbage from my neighbor's farm with no packaging. You know, so those little differences matter, and I think it will matter more and more as tourism shifts more and more, because we're in for it for the next couple of years. Things are going to be a lot different. So I'm with you, Edward, and that, like, we've showcased that at our farm, and people love it. They do. Now the next step is making sure you can process that stuff at scale and actually have a functioning farm. But you know, that's where we come in with more real investment, not just cracking nuts with a pair of pliers.
There's a question from Tony there.
Beneficial state bank.
I've heard of Beneficial. Love to talk with them. I don't remember how we got into maybe one of these conferences this year, but if you have any connections there, I'd love to see them or chat with them more. We've been oh nice. We've been really avoiding like the funds and banks and VC over the year. We've done this all with like normal folks, $1,000 at a time. But we're now expanding into that world. So I'm even going to a banker is a new conditioning for me. Yeah, Tom Stair. Okay, that's why I know it. Yep, that's great. I'd love to connect with him.
Cool. Thanks, Tony.
He obviously wasn't going to be president, but I like that he was up there talking.
Okay, we're already kind of 15 minutes past our normal time. I don't know if anybody wants to do a closing question or we want closing remarks or conclusions.
I just have one question. Thanks, Edward. Would you let us know about your process, even with the banks, and how things are going almost as they unfold? Because I just got drawn into your project as we were talking. I'm ready to become a member right now. I'm looking at your website. But to be fair, like even as you grow, like maybe the eyes of the world will look at you differently too. And that comes into the big players. So as you said, like that means that, you know, like the shark waters were all black. Like, you know, like if things start to get dicey in any way too, like there needs to be sort of a network in which we can send messages, we could write letters, whatever it is, you know, and support in all sorts of ways. Because it feels very personal to me. And I've never even been to your places, but I'm amazed by what's happening, and so I feel it down in the core of my gut. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there are 4,000 people that all came and did our place for different reasons, but it's all come together out of love, and that's an important piece. And I'm glad you feel that, because it's what we mean. Yeah, sorry, it make me emotional. But yeah, man, we have a newsletter we send out, and we're happy to put you on that list. And where are you at? You're in?
I'm in Costa Rica. Yeah.
You're in Costa Rica. When we get back there, we'll be spending some time together, and you're welcome to go out to the farms and meet folks. But
yeah,
well, I've been living on Zooms like everybody has been since the beginning of COVID. I'm really reflecting lately on how Skype dropped the ball. Zoom really picked up and ran with this one. Skype had a 15-year head start and really dropped it. But but I'm happy to meet with people in person a lot and go into details, like I said. So let's do more and collaborate, and happy
I'm
to
ready to do
share
it.
everything. We're here to teach other companies to do what we've done. If it was just about us, I wouldn't do it.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, that was great. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Josh.
Yes.
Fulfilled all our expectations, I think. I knew it was going to be a different type of webinar, and I really appreciate that. Knowing you, I'm even amazed that you'd sit still for so long.
I smoked a bong rep before, so I calmed it on down.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it's really a pleasure, and I normally like to see and hug people, but I'll see you all in here again.
Also, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate the inclusion. I know I kind of just popped up, but thank you.
And everybody should meet the rest of our people on our team. If you ever have very specific things, Steven should sit in and just talk ag. He wouldn't even talk about black sheep. And Sarah could come talk about organization and stuff anytime. Yeah. So if there's other things you think we could be involved in, we can focus more.
You're going to be very much involved in the Regenerate Costa Rica road mapping process, which we're starting right now. So you'll hear a lot from us.
Great. Well, it's really a pleasure. And I talk about you all the time at work. So you give me hope. You give me hope. And we're here. We're here to keep fighting the fight. And I'm going to the Republican convention in August, so I may need some help.
Thank you. Thank you all participants. Have a good day.
Okay, you guys. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you all. Sandra, Christopher. That's nice.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jos.
Bye,
See you later.
Hasta luego. Ciao.
I'm going to another meeting. Bye-bye.
Nice. Us too.
I'm just enter to another meeting. I'm just going to another meeting. Bye-bye.